We are so excited to introduce to you Rookie Season's first ever podcast guest.
We like to call him Red Bull's lucky charm.
Yes, because he joined Red Bull as an aeronautical engineer in 2021. Yup, the same year that they won their first championship.
He's worked with legends. Adrian, Newey, Perez, and even Max Verstappen.
So, meet Shubham Sangodker. He is here to tell you about his F1 journey and how you too can build a career in motorsport.
Yep, so let's get into it.
Yep. Hi, Shubham. We are so excited to have you on our podcast. And thank you for saying yes and being on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being the first guest on our podcast.
Yeah, we're so excited to start our, journey of getting guests on with you.
Mhm.
So we have obviously spoken and we know a lot about you. Would you like to tell everyone tuning in a little bit about yourself?
All right. First of all, thank you guys for having me. I think I love to support this kind of initiatives, like I would say homegrown, passion-driven initiatives within motorsports in India. These are small droplets into the bigger ocean that will eventually, build itself, I hope, in the next 5 to 10 years in India with respect to motorsports. So, about me, well, ever since I was 13, I had this passion of someday working in motorsports and in motorsports in F1 particularly. Ever since I saw that overtake, I think it was the 2007 season. It was a Hamilton and Alonso season. And I was a big Alonso fan back then. And I remember them going through Orush. And, back in the day, there was a speed dial that used to come on Star Sports, I think. And I was like, how could these cars go that fast around that turn? And that really was a spiral effect of me discovering what Formula One was, right? Because after that, I ended up like Googling the sport a little bit, trying to ask some questions to Google back in the days of, 128 kbps internet in Goa in 2007.
This
So-
must
so,
have been dial-up
yeah.
days, right?
Come again?
This must have been like dial-up internet days.
Yeah. Pretty much. It was the kind of internet days when you put a Google search and you hope that it worked, almost. So back in those days, and I think the only person back in those days, or the only few people writing about F1 technically those days, was Scarbs, who is now on F1 TV, and there was Peter Winster, who used to write some technical articles back then, and yeah, these guys kind of taught me how some of these the term aerodynamics and all the technical terms within motorsports. And I think very early on, I as a kid, you don't see other variables and other limitations. You have a dream and you're like, I want to make sure that I try to make this happen.
Yeah.
So Google told me very simply that if you want to become an aerodynamicist, I had learned this new fancy word, which is still hard to pronounce for most people today, that you need to be an aerospace engineer, right? And I was like, okay, what does that leave me with?
Yeah.
So back in the days, 2010, 11, not even many private colleges offered aerospace engineering. The only government ones offering were the 4 big IITs, right?
Okay.
So I landed up, my dream was, I ended up doing aerospace engineering because of that one Google search, because I wanted to get into F1. And I gave up very good colleges. In hindsight, there was nobody better to guide me as well. But I had a great time. I did my aerospace engineering. Landed up working in aerospace with Bell Helicopters for 3 years because they offered me a really, really good role, which I thought would contribute to my eventual role in F1, working in F1 someday. And then I said, okay, I need to give that dream a shot. You land up becoming comfortable into a job after 3 years. And I had a particular incident which kind of triggered a very deep thought process, saying, why did I want to do this in the first place? Like, would you want to would you not want to discover that question? Like, were you good enough to try and get into F1?
Yeah.
And yeah, next day I put my resignation on, which kind of basically surprised everyone. And I said, listen, I'm going to put my resignation in now, 6 months, because I want to help you guys, hand over to the other person, but I need to try this out.
That's crazy.
And then I got admission into this admission also was a very funny thing, right? Since a kid, I knew where I wanted to do my master's. It was Southampton University, Masters in Racing Car Aerodynamics, the place from where Adrian Newey had studied, right?
My God.
And right, and I was like, they had an intake back then of only 12 students per year. This is in Southampton in the UK.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if I will get in or not, but let me try, let me try. Yeah. So because of my experience at Bell and some great reference, I actually got in. But I didn't have the money now because paise ka to socha hi nahi tha, like that is going to cost this much.
Yeah. Who dreams of money though? So
right. My thought was that I thought I would apply, maybe get a rejection, understand why the rejection was there, and apply properly the next year. But to my luck, I got selected that year. And then I was like, what do I do with this now? Right. And then I tried arranging finances from multiple sources and all, and it just wasn't working out because the deadlines are quite, March by March, you had to apply for some certification and visa and all. What happened was, one day I was really sad and I was like, okay, what do I do with my life? Maybe I try next year again, And then I came across this program, one of those days where you have a party with your friends and you go into contemplation. And then I said, okay, hold on, F1 is where I want to go. 8 teams from the UK, 7 teams back then from the UK, 2 in Italy, 1 in Switzerland. Why haven't I looked at Italy as an option? So that night I ended up Googling for a program in Italy. And to my surprise, just that year, or I think it was 1 year before, there was a new program launched by an Italian government initiative. So what this was basically they tied up with 4 universities and all the biggest motorsport companies of Italy. Basically, the Ferrari, Lamborghini, Pagani, Toro Rosso F1 team back then, all the guys basically, because they wanted to retain the Italian talent, because they saw that a lot of Italian talent was moving out. Right. So they created this very amazing program called the university. They created a motor vehicle university. What? It exists, right? Yeah, it exists. And there are multiple specializations, one of which was racing car design. Now, the catch to this was there were only 4 available slots for non-EU students.
4. That's like your odds went from...
Okay, and I was like, okay, 4.
Yeah.
So I was like, acha 12 mein select hoye, abhi ye koshish karte, because the fees was extremely, like, it was very affordable, like, and they basically said that even though you have to pay the fees, the international students who get selected, they will give a scholarship to them back then, because they wanted international students also, so that there's a mix-up happening within the Italian student, because you have to become very international very quickly in motorsports, right? And they had a very thorough process, and I ended up going at basically topping that process. So I was first in the ranking list in that. And by God's grace, at the right place at the right time, this happened for my admissions. Again, the next big thing and next step was to get into F1, right? How do you get into F1? Correct. Today it's much, as hard as it is to get into F1, today it's much simpler than back how it was in 2021, 2020. Because back in the day, only 2 teams sponsored visas to international students, which was Mercedes F1 team and the Red Bull F1 team.
Okay.
The rest usually had issues when it came to, like, in the criteria, they said that you have to be an EU person or a UK person. Okay. These 2 basically were like, oh, we don't care where you're from, we want to get the best.
That's nice.
Right? And I applied to both. I got into both. In Mercedes, I got into F1 wind tunnel program. And at Red Bull, I got into aero development. And even though Mercedes was the winning team, I landed up that year to choose Red Bull Racing. And guess what? We won the championship that year with Max.
You created the Red Bull.
No. Maybe I brought some good luck to them, but I was just like a small part of the entire process, right?
I just have one question. Was Newey being in Red Bull at the time any motivation for you to join?
Of course, 110%. Like, you've basically dreamt of the guy forever. But I have to say that I am equally a very, very big fan of James Allison. Like, I love the guy. I see, like, for example, Newey is like my childhood hero.
Right.
But if I had to say my engineering hero, like my adult hero, was I really started liking James Allison because Mercedes ran a very good technical campaign to expose their engineers to media. So you could connect with them much more than say Red Bull engineers, right? So you heard about Newey as a god, but you saw James Allison as somebody on the ground working with the team, explaining you the problems and all of this guy. So I love the guy. I love the way he speaks. I love the way he articulates his his interviews, and he's just a really nice guy. From at least from whatever I've seen and heard from everybody that has worked at Mercedes, right? And someday I strive to be someone like him, let's say. So but with Adrian, it was great experience. Like you couldn't imagine how. See, that's this common quality I've seen with really, really smart, great people. And I say this because fortunately, again, by God's grace, that I have met a lot of them in the aerospace domain as well. I've met a lot of leading scientists from ISRO, from HAL, from NAL, even from the US during Bell time. And the most common trait they all have, at least the people who was really respected in the industry, is they have humility, right? They have knowledge with humility. And I think that is something that I take away from all these people. Like you see James, you see Adrian. I thought Adrian would be like, this cool guy that who doesn't speak with all the peasant new people, basically. But I got the chance to work with him, like I drew some, some front wing concepts, and we had a couple of discussions together. And even before I left, he wrote a lovely note on the books. I'd gone to get the book signed from him, but he wrote a really lovely note. Like he took the time, wrote a really lovely note for me, and asked me what my plan was. Like basically sat down and spoke for 10 minutes, and I did not see that coming because I was just like, ooh, no.
That's so lovely to hear.
Yeah, so fun days.
Yeah,
fun days.
That's so lovely to hear that you had such a good experience with someone like Newey, because like you said, like, they are like these godly images, and they say never meet your heroes. But sometimes when you do end up meeting them and it's a good interaction, then it obviously makes you feel good and gives you confidence in the career path you've chosen in a way. So that's really nice to hear. In your opinion, what do you think changed in 2021 for Red Bull? Like how, like you said, Mercedes was like the dominating car up until that year. And then what flipped, like if you have any like insight into what really went down?
So there were a couple of things. See, it all, and this year is a good testament to what actually happened during that time. See, teams have priorities, right? For Mercedes, they had won for so long.
Yeah.
They knew they had a very good car. So F1, like they must have switched their program very early on to 2022, right? Like the following year, because they want to continue winning the following year. And you see, like that's what's going to happen. For example, this year, McLaren are going to be pushed, but Mercedes will, teams like Mercedes and Ferrari will already switch.
Yeah.
Red Bull's priority was, however, very different. Red Bull's priority was to win that year. So they pushed very deep into I remember among the top 5, we were the people who were pretty much the last to start the development of the following cars. Right? Because we had people coming from other teams, and they told us where the other cars development are and all of that. And honestly, 2022, we expected to be the 5th fastest team on the grid. Simply because we just did not have enough time, like to put the car together, right?
Yeah.
So what happened was we really pushed, number one, in 2021. We put all our resources, whether it's development, people on track. We really pushed 2021 because we thought we had a shot, and we had a young driver in the form of Max Verstappen who was roaring to try and get a championship, right?
Yeah.
I think the second thing was, if you see the trend, right? Red Bull generally are really good in season development. Traditionally, like if you looked at the trend in those years, because this trends change when the head of departments change. So like Red Bull is a very different organization today to what they were because back that time it was Dan Fallows who was running the show, right? And it was just the handover to Enrico Balbo, who's now running the show. So what Red Bull's strength was that they had great aerodynamicists, but their planning was not really that great in terms of how they added performance. Very, very simply putting. So they were very good in how, like, through season development, while Mercedes was very good with their pre-season development.
Okay.
So when the car came, we were not that competitive. If you see the first half of the year, we used to be the second best car, clearly.
Right.
And just good enough to match Mercedes on some days on some race weekends. But because they had reduced their development effort and we increased our development effort, that gap came close together very quickly. Right? And once you get momentum as a team, that is what flips it. Because imagine you have to, as a team, if you're Mercedes, you've put resources into the next year and then you're like, oh, no, we have to develop this year as well. So now you're pulling people off into this year's development, and the cars are completely different. So people don't have the same momentum. While at Red Bull, people are just flat out pushing parts out. Right?
Yeah.
So this is like an inside story where I know that there was no silver bullet in terms of we found performance here. Oh, this was the silver bullet for the year. It was just pure progressive performance. One team pushing in the other direction and the other team with their legs on two boats at the same time. And they lost, and history will be his testament, they lost both boats.
Yeah. Which is my follow-up to this is that also something that worked as a funda for the next year when it was for Red Bull, where they again concentrated on that year's development to then go ahead and take the championship again the next year?
No, so how Red Bull got ahead in 2022 is an extremely funny and rare story. So
we want to know.
Please do.
No, so the thing is that, see, every other team, the fight was between Mercedes and Red Bull.
Right.
Correct.
Right. Every other team like Ferrari and Aston, whatever, had already switched their plan to next year's, just like people are going to do this year. Right. I'm telling you, nobody is developing car for this year anymore. They've already switched to next year's plans.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the same was happening back then. Now, what happened was, everybody had time, like McLaren, Mercedes, and Ferrari had a lot of time to develop their platform and optimize their platform. Okay. So when we came in 2022, what was everybody's problem? Everybody's problem was bouncing. Right? There was porpoising, bouncing, whatever. And that is because all these guys, right, did not anticipate the problem of the new generation cars. They could see signs of it in the wind tunnel, but they didn't know that it would be so bad on track.
Okay.
So now what do? When you want to extract performance from the race car, you build a car and then you try to optimize it to the ride height, because the cars have high ground effect. The real performance comes from the floor and with the ride height adjustment, right? And you haven't even put the car on track to kind of see and finalize what they want to get out. I mean, you can imagine a team like Mercedes took them 2 to 3 years to admit that this is not the right philosophy to go with, right? So, funnily enough, Red Bull, as I was saying, didn't even have time to optimize. I mean, we barely put the car together on the what do you say, the screening, the marketing day, right, where they do the first laps of the car. We barely put the car together to do that, right? So you book the track the whole day until like 5 p.m., 6 p.m. The car was still not assembled until 4 p.m. Right? So what happened is, and this is an F1 team, okay? So everybody's pushing. So you can imagine what the operation is. So we landed up accepting that 2022 is going to be a bit of a learning curve, and we'll learn from others, and we'll carry our strength to develop in the season aggressively. So as I said, we were expecting to be 4th or 5th. Like we were expecting to be behind McLaren pretty much. Right? So we thought the order would be Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, and then us. Okay. What landed up happening is you landed up going to pre-season testing and you see everybody bouncing and you don't see the Red Bull bouncing as much.
Right.
But we didn't optimize our race package only. See, you'll end up designing your floors and all to optimize performance.
Right.
So what landed up happening is we saw that, oh shit, this is not the right way to go, or this is the right way to go to, but not in the conventional sense. So it's like you sent 3 people, they crashed to discover what the problem was. They told you what the problem is. And now you had the unique chance to take the right route of development. While they had 2 choices. Either they accept, that this is really the wrong path to go to, and they walk backwards and then start walking in the right direction. And in F1, everybody has big egos. Everybody. Like inside the teams, people, I mean, I wouldn't say egos, people are very personally touched with what they design.
Right.
That is why they are in the sport, right? Especially at top teams. So
one wants to admit.
Teams like Ferrari and McLaren learned that, but it took them some time. By the time Red Bull had already gone ahead. So if you look at 2022, 2023, you see the floors of Red Bull, like you see the crash pictures and all of that. You will see that the Red Bull floors were almost 3x more complex. Like 2 to 3 times more complex than what Ferrari, McLaren, and Mercedes had. Like you looked at a Red Bull floor and you were like, this is from out of this world, like not from the earth. They were that complex, like shapes that only machines could design, right? Like they were really complex, really complex. And that is because they almost got I don't know what the right phrase is, but we got the benefit of doubt that we saw that everybody has gone on the wrong route because all their tools told them to go that way. And then Red Bull was like, oh, acha, aisa nahi karna. You have to solve the problem that way. So we got a head start on the problem, even though we did not have a head start.
It's like the.
And then, of course, taking nothing away from Red Bull aerodynamicists, we did a great job of actually designing the car the right way, because you can see that just this inside is not good enough. Like Ferrari did a decent job. And then it became all about the second key ingredient and sauce was how you did wind tunnel testing. Because suddenly, see, your CFD tools will give you a certain result. But the thing about F1 is the speciality is the close proximity to the ground. And now you've made regulations which technically benefit people who develop close to the ground. And I'll tell you how minute these differences are. Okay, imagine a wind tunnel. And imagine a rolling road wind tunnel. I don't know if you know how a wind tunnel works. Basically, they put a car and the platform underneath moves to simulate like the actual road. Right? Now, this road, this belt that moves, completely changes the characteristics of the car, whether it's a smooth belt or it's a textured belt, a rough belt. Because a rough belt simulates more like what the track is, because the track is rough, the track is not smooth.
Correct.
And if you look at a simulation of a smooth belt versus a rough belt, they're completely different world. You're like talking completely different. You're talking like if you look at the aerodynamics, it's almost a difference of 3 or 4 tenths on the track. If you have not gotten it right.
That's a lot, yeah.
Right? And I'm converting these numbers from downforce points, because I don't know if your audience will appreciate downforce points.
No.
So I've converted the points into time.
Your conversion is helpful.
The conversion is exactly helpful for all of us.
Right? So around 3 to 4 to 5 tenths is what you're talking about, is the difference if you keep believing in a smooth belt and not go on a rough belt. Right?
Okay.
So these are some tricks that I wouldn't say tricks, but I would say some new optimization points that came up in the new regulations, which Red Bull identified earlier than others because of by looking at others' mistakes, which is why we got such a head start. I mean, for us to win like what 22 out of 23 races in 2023, that's unheard of. Like that's unheard of in this modern era when everybody has the money to spend, and that clearly means we had a very unique advantage or a big head start. Once you crack the problem, now you see what McLaren did. They understood clearly. Like for McLaren to go like really like jump in the championship last year, they understood what they were doing wrong and how they had to figure it out correctly, which I think neither Ferrari nor Mercedes did. Because if you think about it, they've not had a jump in their performance. Maybe their performance curve is linearly increased, and that's why they're consistently behind Red Bull. But McLaren understood something really fundamentally different, or either they got engineers from Red Bull to tell them what they had to do fundamentally different. Right? Yeah, it keeps happening in F1.
I'm sure. And like engineers bring the most valuable, knowledge about the other teams.
Yeah.
But like you said, McLaren, like they came out of nowhere last year, didn't they? Like suddenly it was like
they were back onto the map all of a sudden.
Yeah. And I think in 2023 they had one of the worst years. In the five, they were at the bottom, and then now we're in the McLaren era, as people like to say. So, do you think
I have no complaints?
It's a McLaren era?
I don't actually. I like it because you have two top drivers fighting it out. Then Max Verstappen, I consider him like the Alonso of the modern era, always outperforming the car. You know, so I really like that, and then the teams. It's just a very good time for motorsports and Formula One because it's such an unpredictable sport. Sometimes people are winning, and even at McLaren, it's just not one guy. There's a Lando pulling off a brilliant qualifying in Monaco. There's a Piastri just laying his stamp back on the putting his feet down on the ground and saying, I'm the boss here. So, and their dynamics are still chill. Like somehow they have not crashed into each other, which will happen at some point in the year.
We keep talking about which race
it's going to happen. And before every race, we think like, okay, maybe this one, maybe this one, maybe this one. In fact, I think the closest we came to it was not Monaco, the last race that we saw.
What? Acha, okay.
Yeah,
where
Barcelona.
were we last year? Spain. Yeah, they came close to crashing.
No, that was the closest they would have because they were 1-2.
Yeah, I mean the first race of the season, Australia.
It didn't seem like they were going to crash.
Oscar was gunning for one, and then he spun out, and that was crazy.
Yeah.
I think also, Jashan and I being new fans, we've seen. Mainly, we started watching at a time when Max was dominating F1. So we've never loved him, because you always love the underdog. But now Max is the underdog in some sense of the word. And suddenly we're gaining such respect for him because genuinely that man is outperforming the car.
Yeah,
and how,
definitely.
Like, it's crazy. It is really. So we were sorry.
No, he's a real talent, and I can tell you a little bit. I've got the chance again to speak to him when a couple of times, like 3 times.
Okay.
And I can tell you the guy is. I mean, I wish sometimes every Formula One or some Formula One drivers would be more like him. He just doesn't care. He doesn't care about. He doesn't care about whether he's speaking to Adrian Newey or me or Christian Horner. He's just brutally honest, and he's just like, yeah, bro. He's really Dutch. Like if you had to describe like really Dutch people, like he's really Dutch that way. And nothing is that all this stardom has not really gotten to him. Like you see, the thing is, the stardom has like levels. Like you are the first time champion, you feel like you are the king of the world, and then the next couple of championships you don't care as much. Like you can see how Lewis Hamilton also was like by the time you're 7-time world champ, 6-time world champion, you're like, mujhe hi jitna hai, like like that. So what really struck me was this guy had won his championship the night before. Next day he flew to the entire factory, and either he was in shock of what was happening, or he was just like, yeah, it was a great battle, just speaking like a normal conversation. And the guy is an actual...
One you're talking about, like that after the crazy 2021 end.
Yeah. He was just speaking like a normal human being. And the guy is just, all he cares about in his life is racing. He does not, and family. He actually has no distractions. He doesn't even like care about any distractions. And then, you see the kind of commitment. He jumps on a jet, does like a 24-hour race in the jet that he flies, goes racing to 24 hours. So yeah, I mean, he's that pure racer breed almost.
And that's so nice to hear, because I think as an audience, that is the perception you get. So it does seem that he is
how he shows himself to be.
Because you can tell interviews and everything that he's just not bothered. He just wants to
very unfazed and like within himself and sure of what he's doing. Those are the things you kind of like get a feeling of when you see him on screen.
I mean, if you look at the entire grid, like the entire grid is kind of mellowed. Like you have a Norris, you have a Piastri, you have a Hamilton, you have a Charles, you have a Sainz. And if you look at all these characters, you can put them in one box. And then you have Max, Super Max. Just like...
That's true. We have a friend. We have a really good friend who's a big fan of Max, and that's what she says. She's like, he is a enigmatic character, like someone you want to root for, because his personality is so interesting. So it's great to hear about your interactions. Did you interact with any other driver during your time?
I got a chance to interact with Yuki and with Gasly. Never got to meet Checo as much. Yuki is an absolute sweetheart. Again, I would say a very raw driver. Very raw driver. I mean, I had the chance to have lunch with Yuki a couple of times. Because very nice guy. Very, very nice guy. Because his simulator trainer was also like, we were friends. So sometimes we would go to gym together and then we would have lunch. So he would Yuki would finish his simulator session and come. And sometimes when I would finish late, I could had a couple of lunch with him, and he would just crack you up with all this random stories that he would tell you from all over the world. Yuki was fun. And then Pierre was I just met him and saw him a couple of times, but never really spoke to him as much. There was something, some people you meet and you feel like you can speak to them, like they give you that, I don't know, it's some kind of an energy and aura or whatever it is, right? With Pierre, it was always like, I at least felt it. Maybe I never know. I don't know if it's true or not, but I've also heard.
Little French people are a little. It is true. I've spent some time in France, and they're a little. They like their space a little bit.
Yeah. Pretty much, I've seen all the drivers except for the one I really want to see, which is Alonso.
You're still the Alonso fan that you were when you began.
Oh yeah. You give him a great car, I will forget every driver on the field. I'm like, ye bhagayega gaadi. Isko do gaadi. Ye bhagayega.
We recently did a reel which was like our controversial opinions, and this might hurt you, but one of our controversial opinions was that Alonso should retire. And that one really got people fired up, because he has such, he has fans who have been with him for such a long time, and who
pre-McLaren fans.
And they believe that he will make a comeback. So I think we can put you in that category as well. Maybe.
No. I mean, I've kind of I feel like today, if you give him the fastest car, he will still not be able to out-qualify a Max Verstappen or an Oscar Piastri or a Lando Norris or a Charles Leclerc, in my opinion. He might match them at certain points, but given equal cars, I think these other younger guys will win against him, just simply because of age difference and time and how much you're committed and all of that. See, you see the Alonso of his age, he beat the great Michael Schumacher, right? Twice. So yeah, I mean, when Aston was doing well and finishing podiums, you gave him a great car and he was P3 every single time, right? So So that's what the guy can do. Like, given a great car, he's just a beast. He's like one of those beasts, and I think Max Verstappen would be like one of those people, which is why I love Max, because he reminds me of the younger Alonso. That give the car and he would outperform the car, basically.
That's so true. We were just chatting about how
Right.
having such a fun like Saturday thanks to you. Like just hearing all these stories.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't recollected the stories in a long time myself, because when I got off F1, that time I used to do a lot of podcasts with a lot of people, and you can hear the stories in some of these podcasts. So I was just thinking, oh, it's been a great experience for me also trying to recollect this, that I had this much fun.
Yeah.
So
Taking you
in
back.
in hindsight,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you just kind of mentioned about it. So I think it's a good time to segue into what are you doing now? Like, how did your stint at F1 end, and why did you choose to end it? If you want to share, and what you're up to now, we would love to know.
yeah, I mean, I would say there were a couple of reasons why I let's say decided to maybe move on, or at least take the leap of faith again. I think my life has been a couple of leap of faiths, one over another, and somehow things have worked out. So the first was I got spoiled in the sense that I became like, see, as a kid, you want to someday work in F1, let alone win a championship at some point, right? So right place, right time. Got to win two championships, right, and got to feel like what it means to win a championship. Because otherwise, you never know. Because you think you'll go into a smaller team, eventually make it to a bigger team, and someday win a championship. Like there are people at Red Bull who had not won a championship for over 10 years. Like there are people from McLaren were there. So it was their first championship as well.
Yeah.
Secondly, I saw the kind of life that I would live if I had to do it, keep on doing it. And it was a good life, no doubt. But I also had to consider that my personal constraint, in the sense that I would become the kind of kid who would come 2 weeks in a year from London to my hometown, and I had a personal situation with my mom, which I was like, can I do better? Right? Can I do better than that? And then my second biggest interest was always in education and trying to develop my core, like leadership and skills and all of that, because I am good with people as well. Like I like speaking with people, I like working with people, and that side of me I'd never explored as much professionally. I'd explored it in like some other side events and all that you do, right? Kicks that you do. So I was like, okay, there are two pathways I have. I can work in this field for the next 5, maybe 10 years, and then decide to move on, as and when it comes. Or I can try and do something now, spend the next 2-3 years in a bit of a chaos, and figure something out that I want to do for the rest of my life, let's say, right? And as I said, my biggest interest was in education and in leadership position. So there was a program that the FIA and the European Union kind of launched at that point, which was into education and building education ecosystems, but had a connection to motorsports.
Okay.
So again, right place at the right time, very different skill sets of being interested in education and motorsports at the same time. I applied for it, and again, I got into it. And this program, while it kind of gave me a soft landing, like 2 years to figure life out, like figure entrepreneurship, figure education. So it is a very cool program. Like you go across multiple continent, like multiple countries in Europe, spend some time and build the ecosystem, or help build the motorsport ecosystem there, right?
Okay.
And back in that time, I'm like, ये बाहर कर रहा हूँ तो इंडिया में भी करना ही है, right? And I got connected with the Indian F4 Championship guys, Akhilesh Reddy, who runs all the RPPL and the Indian F4 Championship and IRL. And I said, I said, Akhil, you are running a championship in which 80% of the workers are foreigners, right? You have to get all these people. Why don't we make a 2-3 year development plan? Like at least, by 2028, we should have 80%, we should be able to flip the coin, 80% Indian, 20% expertise from abroad.
Yes.
Right. And I mean, it made all sense. It made sense because you want to be homegrown. It makes financial sense. It gives you flexibility to, let's say, with your racing calendar, because racing calendars, especially in India, are a bit volatile in the sense that something comes up and you have to shift or move. So he said, okay, let's give it a shot in the first year. And we basically created a very unique program, and we just launched 2 days ago for this year as well.
Okay.
This year we're doing it slightly different.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're doing, it's called Indian Motorsport Academy.
Okay.
So now it's officially under the vertical of Indian Racing League and Indian F4 Championship.
Okay.
And our aim is to build, we did over the last 2 years, we did on a pilot basis, getting kids to like intern on ground. And we got some huge success stories, right? People who've worked into F1 Academy now, people have walked into professional motorsports team, people have gotten into great universities abroad in motorsports.
So just an added question. These are people across all walks of racing, or are these specifically drivers or engineers? Just to get a better understanding.
So our focus at Indian Motorsports Academy is very much currently on engineers and mechanics, right? We do not do drivers yet because there are lots of opportunities for drivers in India. In some or the other baseline category, like you have karting, you have initial, like the series that MRF runs and JK Tires runs. So you have lots of initial opportunities for them, but not for engineers or mechanics. So that's our focus. This year we want to add a level of management and socials also, because now the championship was trying to grow. So they also need people who work with them part-time, like for 2 or 3 months, and the championship is running. So we want to get some management students, some people who are interested in the ecosystem, to give them also the boost, because what you need is some kind of a launchpad to your career in this ecosystem, right? So that's the attempt. So we are building, like this year we just launched a program we call it the Mega program. Mega standing for Motorsport Engineering Graduate Accelerator Program, right? And the idea is what we are doing this year is we are creating like India's biggest talent hunt, in which we are running them through an F1 style screening process. So you also get to know what an F1 style screening process is like. And the top 30 students, so 24 engineering plus mechanics and 6 management students, right, will get selected into to have a sponsored internship at the Indian F4 Championship. So fully sponsored, basically.
That's insane.
For these kids,
yeah, for me that's
exactly. So that's the whole point, that you give people the opportunity. Like there needs to be some form of a loop. See, this whole industry doesn't have macro size jobs. It's micro size jobs. Right. But at the end of the day, there needs to be some form of those launchpad for those 25, 30 kids who've invested their time, effort, and are really passionate to get some kind of a launch from their own country, right? It shouldn't be कि आपको 50 lakh देना है. You need to spend 50 lakhs, go to the UK only to get some experience. Why can't you get some experience here? See what if motorsports in reality matches the motorsports that you see on TV. Are you ready to put that level of effort in? Are you ready to? It's not a 9 to 5 job. Are you ready to go above and beyond? And if it's not for you, it's not for you. It's a great thing for your profile that you've worked here. You always get into like Tatas and Mahindras because your profile stands out. So all in all, it benefits everyone. And most importantly, you get connected and networked to a lot of people within who have similar interests. And then, these small opportunities lead to larger things in life. You cannot plan out how this lands up creating like I'll give you an example, right?
Yeah.
Last year, so we have a criteria of above 18. Okay. Last year we got a student who was really good. He was 17 years old, 16 and a half at that point.
Okay.
And we said, we will give you this opportunity to work because you've cleared our process. So a guy who's done 4th year engineering, so you've basically beaten the guy who's done his 4th year engineering on merit basis, right? why is age a barrier? So I said, we will allow you to be there in the pits as long as you are accompanied by your parent.
Okay.
Right? So your parent has to be with you during the race weekend. And we will make the arrangements for that. As long as you do that, we are great. And this guy his dad used to live in like UAE, in Qatar.
Okay.
So he actually flew down, attended the race weekends with him. And can you imagine, this kid went back to Qatar for his school, for his high school, basically, right? He was in his 17 years old. And he got selected. He did this F1 in schools program and all. And he got selected now into the Williams Young Academy. This kid's life is set.
That's insane.
Where they get mentored at such an early stage from engineers from Williams. Right? And his father called me and told me about it. And it was a big thing. Like,
of course.
So these are things you cannot like expect, like how your academy will end up doing this. So like this, we've had a lot of success stories. So this year we've realized that we will formalize this and create it like a proper talent hunt program, so that every year in India people know that 30 people are going to get the opportunity of working.
Right.
And we are working towards trying to pushing this to like 50 opportunities. That's our target, like to eventually partner with some other race series to get around 50 and maybe even 60-70 opportunities, solid opportunities of internship, of experience that they can take to whatever they do in the future. Because in India, we're still very early to say we are going to hire you for this, right? It's still quite early, and usually the space is, I know you, you know me, you get hired. That's how the space is. The reality of this thing is, right? But at least this is a very equal, transparent, and affordable way to get experience in racing as an engineer, as a mechanic in India itself.
That's so true.
Fair.
It's a stepping stone, and like if you go that, you don't know what's the next step.
You don't know where the next leap is going to be.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity for everyone. Come on board. It's like an all India program, all India talent hunt that we will run every year, and everybody can enroll. No matter if you're from Goa, from Mumbai, from Chennai, from Delhi, it's an equal opportunity platform. Everything is standardized, and you get feedback on everything that you do. So that's what we're trying to do, really. And we're trying to get engineers, mechanics, and hopefully, as the championship grows, we will have more and more opportunities to work.
That's really cool. Like, even as like the smallest thing that we are doing, like, starting a podcast, it like in India, you're kind of separated from the ecosystem, right? A little bit. F1, F2, that side of things. So yeah, like, having you guys and having some mentorship for these kids, I'm sure it will make them feel like things are more accessible, things are the dream is not that far. So it'll be really good.
Well, listen, we're happy to invite you for the F4 championship this year. If you guys want to come down and have a look around, make some reels of what's happening, interact with some drivers, feel free to come down.
We'd absolutely love that.
Yes, we would really.
Yeah. That's the least I can offer you guys. So happy for you guys to come down.
For us already,
I was just going to say
doing this podcast, but that would be amazing. We'll definitely speak to you about that and figure. So that was such an interesting conversation, even for us as F1 fans. I think I learned so much.
I was just going to say, I learned quite a bit today.
Yeah. So we hope you guys enjoyed it. Our first ever podcast guest. Hopefully many more. Thank you, Shubham, for giving us your time. And we had a great time. Yeah. So see you next time.
Bye.